The chronic shortage of cybersecurity professionals globally means it's more critical than ever for historically unrepresented demographics to fill the need. We now have over 4 million job openings worldwide, and meanwhile, women only make up 20% of the cybersecurity workforce. While it's up from a mere 11% in 2013, there's still a lot of opportunity to be seized in cybersecurity careers. Being a trailblazer isn't without its challenges, but according to the female cybersecurity professionals I speak with, they're up to the task, and people like Dee are now breaking through the glass ceiling and landing the top job as a Chief Information Security Officer. Hello, my name is Darren Argyle, and I'm the host for today's webinar. I'm also the chairman of the Cyber Leadership Institute, who are sponsoring today's online event. Today's session is the third of a webinar series, and I'll be chatting with Dee, who's an award-winning Chief Information Security Officer, and we'll be hearing more about her story. Dee has been awarded CISO of the Year at the Cybersecurity Awards in 2019, and this was recognised for her contributions in privacy and cybersecurity sector, and this was named by Secure Computing magazine in the UK. Dee was also rated as 50 most influential women in cybersecurity in 2019. She was also the finalist of SC Awards Europe, a CISO of the Year award, and was the finalist of Security Leader of the Year in 2017, Women in IT Excellence Award. So quite a number of accolades there for Dee. So Dee is currently serving as the Group CISO at Corella. This is an organisation based in the UK. For those who don't know, Corella was created by Exaserve as an independently owned business in order to bring private investment to fuel innovation in the centre of the gas markets and beyond. I've got some questions, Dee, that I'd like to ask you, and I know we've known each other for many years now, and it'd be good just for everybody to hear your story. I know there's lots of experience that you've got, both from a cybersecurity, privacy perspective, but there's also a lot of natural talent that I think you've cultivated. When I say natural talent, I mean it appears natural, but I know you've worked really hard to build your personal brand and your ability to influence and positively impact both your peers and senior executives in organisation, which is, you know, the strength of a top regarded CISO. So let's start at the beginning. I think most people listening would want to know about you and, you know, how you got started in cybersecurity. Was there something, you know, in your studies that set you on the path? Was it a hobby or something else?
So that's a really interesting question, and one which it doesn't have a straight answer, I don't think. So I joined the industry, what was it, 15, 16 years ago? And back when we started out on our journey, information security and cyber weren't really a thing. It was kind of a back office function
Yes.
in the technology space. So it was almost recognized as you just push policy and keep the technology secure, and there was nothing kind of front of house when we joined. So my actual pathway into information security and cyber began when I was at sixth form. And I was doing ICT as part of my A-levels, and actually had a female teacher, so it was an interesting one, and her name was Mrs. Jones, and we connected, and she could see in me the passion for the subject and that I really excelled and enjoyed within the ICT space. As part of our curriculum in sixth form, we actually went on a field visit to IBM Warwick. And I remember walking in and thinking, I don't know what happens here and what this is all about, but this office is amazing and I really want to work in this office one day. No idea what they did and how it all ran and what happened behind the scenes. And that's where this little fire grew in me, because I had this passion in ICT. I had a really strong relationship with the teacher, and she was really supportive and grew the talent within the class. And I feel like that's a big inspiration for me, and something we should really be focusing on within our school curriculums, is bringing the female talent in earlier on in their stages through the school curriculums and the sixth form curriculums, to kind of start driving that thought process about technology and encouraging it from there, because that's kind of where my journey started into cyber. And it's one which I think we look at kind of careers, and when we get to kind of A levels and going to university, but there's something about driving that inspiration through right from primary school all the way through to sixth form. And that's where I made my decision to pursue a career in technology, and then went on to apply for a computer science degree at Nottingham Trent. And then as I was doing that degree, I kind of started to understand what I do and don't like as part of that curriculum. And so I was doing a lot of coding at the time, and then very technical, deep aspects of technology, and realized that as much as I can do it, it's not where I want to focus my efforts. And so started to bring in more of the business aspect of it, and blended business with technology. That was my personal choice. I think different people have choices around that. And then as part of that degree course, I did a placement year at IBM, and finally had the guts to apply, because the biggest thing is sometimes you don't know if you can get in, so you don't think, oh, I won't bother, I'll probably never get it, or I don't know if I would be good enough to do that, so you kind of almost hold yourself back. And because I'd been to visit IBM in the sixth form, it wasn't such a big thing to me. I'd already seen. So I was like, right, I've been there. I don't know what it's all about, but I know I want to go and work in that office. So I'm going to apply regardless of what happens. It was a bit of a wild card for me, because I didn't think I'd get it, to be fair. And I did. So I joined IBM as a placement student, and worked within the service management remit for e-business. So supporting e-business accounts from a service management perspective, where I got involved in problem and change management, and sort of built up a bit of experience around problem and change, and then also around identity and access management, and started to understand how service management works, and actually what does IBM do and what does this look like behind the scenes, and spent a good 13 months of my placement there learning about different aspects of service management and e-business. And back then, that's where cyber used to sit, or information security used to sit, was within the service management space. So I then went back to uni and completed my final year, and applied to the graduate schemes. And there were a number of graduate schemes that we applied to. And that's where I met my very first manager in new business. So security new business at the time, wasn't it? And we were doing bids, so putting together the information security solutions for bids that we were bidding for, business that we were bidding for, and that is when I officially joined a cybersecurity or information security function, and spent my time understanding how a security solution is built into and surrounds the actual bigger technology solution, and what is it that we're doing, and working with the wider technology bid team and sales team. So that's where my career path started.
All began.
Yeah, that's where it all began.
Fantastic. And obviously I remember that final bit very well, because that's obviously where we met, Dee. So
we met,
I always remember when we first met, I could definitely see the absolute passion for what you were doing, and you were always looking to succeed. So I think when we see people looking to move into cybersecurity, I think we naturally have to assume that people have a passion for it, because without that, it's you need people pushing on that. So in the early part of your career, what experiences, Dee, do you think best prepared you for the role that you're doing today? You know, because, you know, is there any kind of personal struggles or professional attributes that you think are important, or is there a mix of both? You know, when everybody looks back, they can always pick out a few things and go, that really toughened me up, or is there some things that you can look back on and you're useful for today?
There are. I think there's two aspects to this. One is self-limiting beliefs.
Right, interesting, yeah.
That's a really big one. And the other one is thinking outside of the box and not being boxed by anybody else. So finding your way through that. Self-limiting beliefs is all around imposter syndrome. Can I really do this? Is this something that I can really achieve? It must take someone really special to do this. And I haven't got those superpowers or super qualities. You know, like there's these really self-limiting beliefs where you can almost think, I could never achieve that, or that's too far away, or why is that person so special? To me, it's something that I learned really early on, is we're all human beings and we all start at the same place and we can all get to wherever we want to get to. We just have to have the focus, the passion, the drive and self-belief that we will achieve it. And it's your own self-belief, not something that somebody else gives you. You've got to believe in it yourself. And that was a big thing that I've learned, and especially being at IBM, because it's quite competitive. It's quite being in those environments, and you've always got to go up against everything else that's going on around you. And you kind of learn that if you don't have that and don't build on that, you can quite quickly limit yourself. No one else can limit you. You can limit yourself. That was a big one. And then the other part of that was, I am a female, I am young, I am Asian, I am a number of things. And when you look at me, you might not always, well, not you, but, you know, it wasn't always perceived as this person, you know, there were challenges that I faced because of those things. And I think from my perspective, it put the fire in me to work 10 times harder. And sometimes, unfortunately, we do have to work a little bit harder to prove ourselves and kind of show that we can do it. But also, whether you don't necessarily have role models that look like you or are like you, you almost have to find the role models that support you and role models and mentors that are there to support you on your journey, and find those people and create a tribe and go and do you know what, the one thing I would say is around network, and we were taught this quite early on, but it didn't actually occur to me how important this was until later on in my career, is network and making friends and all of and actually being your authentic self and never faltering from that, not changing who you really are, but also knowing that your self-limiting beliefs are something that you need to work on. So it's self-development, and looking at the fears, like what are you afraid of, and then knocking those fears out of yourself in some way, shape or form. So afraid of failure, don't be afraid to fail, but get up and go again, keep going. So there's a bunch of things I think I learned that have supported to get to this place today.
Yeah, and I think the many things that you're talking about there, and one thing that strikes a chord with me is this authenticity. And I think as we all get older, we definitely become more authentic. But if we can do that much sooner and be true to ourselves, everything will just feel so much more natural. But I think we try to fit into other people's boxes, as you said, and really actually people want to see the innovation, you know, as you start in your career. So don't try to fit into somebody else's box. So that's interesting. So now, Dee, I mean, you're an award-winning CISO, which is fantastic. So congratulations. And you're doing some great things in your career. So well done on that. You know, it's clear to see, and you know, I know it's not been easy, as you've talked about the challenges and everything else. But those challenges have obviously made you what you are today as well. So that there was an element of that. What qualities do you think are required to make it in a CISO role and rise to the top, even amongst your peer group? Because you know you can make it in a CISO role, but you've gone beyond that, Dee. You haven't just made it as a CISO and kind of survived. You've actually thrived and got, you know, these awards. So what qualities do you think in you do you think has allowed you to rise even amongst your peers, do you think?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think humility is a big one. I think for me, one thing I've always made from the beginning and till today is something I said to somebody a while back, and actually as well, I was at Halfords and I was asked by the executive team a question, and I'll never forget the answer, and everyone didn't actually know what to say to me. I said, is it the title that defines who you are, or is it you who defines who you are, and the title is just the secondary when you're in a workplace? And it's that humility and authenticity. So for me, my biggest driver is, and I feel like this is where it works, is always coming to the table as your true authentic self and connecting with people, because people are what runs everything, and we are all people, and it's that human to human connection, emotional intelligence, being able to actually take yourself out of your own box and your own career and what you're doing and what your objectives are, and actually look at things from somebody else's perspective and understand what they are doing, what they are going through, and how you can support that journey, and almost taking that bird's eye view, but always looking from the other side or the other angle. I think that's really important, especially with your stakeholders and the people around you, is to stop what you're doing. Don't worry about what you need to do. Look at what they're doing and understand what they need to do, what their challenges are, and how you can then enable them and support them in that. And actually just forget being a CISO for a minute and just be a business leader or an enabler, and just support the journey of the bigger objectives. Because one thing I learned really quickly when I came out of MSPs into the end user organization was, within MSPs, this is what we do. We live and breathe cyber, and we shove it down everybody's kind of throat. Whereas when you flip to the other side, you realize that cyber is one small cog in a wider organization that's actually got bigger objectives to make money or do something or sell something or achieve something. And so your mindset has to change, where you're like, I'm not the biggest problem in this organization. Actually, their objective is to earn money and do X, Y, Z. How do I enable that? What am I doing to help them do that? And then along the way, connect as a human being, like just put the bravado down and just share knowledge. Knowledge shared and the collective is how we are all going to support each other to be successful. Holding on to things isn't the way forward. It's being collective, it's sharing, it's networking, it's talking, it's supporting, it's experiences shared. And I think that's where you go into becoming more than just a CISO, and you start to help build and shape the future, and look at how you can support organizations in achieving what they want to achieve. And I think for me, there's a whole bunch of other things in there I think we could touch on that says, actually, you know, this is what's really important. But I think that's key, is people connections, emotional intelligence, talking, understanding. What's the business risk? What's the business drivers? How are you actually supporting that objective? Get involved in it a different way. Bring a different angle to it. Think outside the box. You know, that's when people get shocked and think, oh, you're not just an infosec and you're not just a no person. In fact, quite the opposite. You hear us do some really cool stuff, and you're looking at how you can enable us to do that and find ways through it, and actually come to the table with an idea that somebody might not have thought of, and bring it to the table. You know, get involved in the different functions around the organization, and with that, people will then share with you, and you'll learn new things about, and suddenly start thinking, oh wow, I can get involved in all sorts of initiatives. So I think, I don't know whether that answers the question, but I think that's kind of.
It absolutely does. And I think what's coming through quite loud and clear to me, Dee, is you've obviously found an ability to communicate with people. And this is probably, if you look historically, where we've failed as an industry, I think, or as a profession, it's been our inability to communicate effectively at the various levels. Because, you know, we've now no longer sat in the back office.
That's
you know, CISOs are in the front office. They've got the big seat at the table with everybody else. You have to communicate, and you have to communicate in language that they understand. And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, that's what you've been able to do. And the first way to do that is, obviously, it's a person sat across from me. You know, what did you do at the weekend? You know, it's all those kind of, build a relationship up, and then you can accelerate that relationship to do the things that you need to do. That's brilliant.
Absolutely,
so look, you're truly an inspiration to many young women, Dee, but also for those who have diverse backgrounds and culture. So you kind of tick all those boxes that we desperately need. You know, you mentioned at the start of the call, you didn't have anybody as a role model that looked like you, but now, you know, there are people like you, and I think this is fantastic to see people in your position, you know, really trailblazing. What advice would you have for young women who are contemplating a career in cyber, and potentially somebody who comes even from, you know, your culture and background as well, Dee, but you know, just focus on women for a bit. What do you think? What advice would you have for them?
That's a really good question. I think the key here is find your tribe. And I love this statement, because what you need is, you need your believers around you to support you through the times where you are going to have difficult times. And you need to keep them close. Your believers, the people that see what you can achieve and support you and encourage you and can help you to go on that journey. So that, and I prefer find your tribe to build your network, because I feel like it's more of a personal thing of you become really close with those people, and it is a tribe that will go with you for a very long time. And that's a really important thing, and it's something that you can think of. The other thing is, I think mentoring and support, and finding, but not just mentoring for the sake of it. So as in, I'm going to go and find someone because I want to do X. It's actually naturally, who are you actually synergizing with, and what can you learn from them? And it doesn't necessarily have to be in information security or cyber. It could be somebody that is really great at public speaking that you synergize with, and it's a fear that you've got to go and get over it, and you think, how did you do that? Is something, because that was one of my fears, and I couldn't public speak, and I had to go and get over that to be able to sit and do these type of conversations and put myself out there. So I think that actually leads into a point where it's kind of like, understand what your own limitations are on the things that you need to work on, and do the work, go on that. You know, for me it was you know, I can't talk on a public stage. I was really scared. I'd just clam up and I couldn't say what I needed to say. So I did go and do courses on public speaking and how I can get over that fear and anxiety, and how to deal with that anxiety and bring it all down, so that I can actually get my message across and come across as myself, and not somebody that's kind of sitting there going, oh my God, what did I say? So I think it's also go on your own journey and think wider than just your career. So you can't, and it's about experience. It's not just about exams and what tests you can take and how you can prove yourself academically. Develop yourself as a whole, like all the way around. and find different role models in different walks of life that have to be in completely different walks of life to you, where you can actually learn different things from. My other advice is, you've got to find this place in yourself where you kind of don't accept the norm, but challenge it in the right way. So there's different ways of challenging things, and it's something that I've learned over the course of my career. And when I was younger, I was quite headstrong and quite emotional and like, oh my God. And I think as I've got older, I've kind of calmed down a bit and said, okay, don't really agree with this, but how am I actually going to make a difference? How am I going to change this? And how do I go about doing that? And finding different clever ways to get involved in initiatives to do that. And developing that whole, okay, I don't agree with something, but how do I then challenge it in the right way? And the other thing is always find time for yourself, and some support and downtime where you can release the stress and the anger and the things that might build up in certain scenarios and situations, and do that in a healthy way, because something that we've learned over time is that building up on that stress level and that anxiety and that constant, worry or whatever else, we have to have healthy outlets, and building that as well. I think there's a bunch of and support each other. And the thing is, the other part of it is we have a lot of initiatives to drive women into cyber, but I actually just like drive humans into cyber, drive people with a passion into cyber. There are men and that out there that support women, and there are women out there that support men, and we are all humans. Let's just support one another. And I think it's that unconscious bias piece of, as much as we don't, that we want that equality and we want that balance in the sector and in our industry, we all have to do our own work, because we're not all perfect, and neither am I. I've been on my own unconscious bias training and to understand where that fits with me. And I think there's so many things, but what I would say is it is a place where there are hundreds of roles, hundreds of opportunities. You could be whatever you actually choose or want to be, and the decision is in your hands, and you can drive your career within cyber, and people will embrace that. They will welcome you in. It's not something that you have to fight against anymore. It's actually an open door. And I think that there's so many opportunities and so many different things to do. From okay, so cyber isn't all technical. There's project management, there's business analysis, there's so many different aspects. There's communication, education, training, and awareness. These are all places where we've got gaps, where we need the support, not just the technical aspect where you're sitting in a SOC or you're doing these type of technical aspect. The variety of roles in our industry and what people can achieve is phenomenal, and maybe it's something we need to do more about to make that more known. It's not all just one type of role. So you're right, there's a lot of variety out there, and I think that's where the diversity comes in. It is actually playing to the strengths of people with diversity, because there's so many diverse roles that need filling, and if everybody was the same, we certainly wouldn't have the type of defensive nature that we need against these very sophisticated attacks. We need people who can think differently. So look, one of the most challenging parts of a CISO role, and I've experienced this myself firsthand, is getting off to a good start. And I know you're not in a new organization, but you kind of got a new roles and responsibilities and new challenges in this new structured element. And quickly getting to grips with things like culture, driving the top-down agenda, and having people who come along with you on the journey is really important, right? In your experience, besides using we've got this structured approach, which is the playbook that we've got, the first 100 days as a CISO. What are some of the critical few things that you think you need to get right in your first 100 days? Because, I think that's where the battle is won and lost for a CISO, is those first 100 days. What are the
just a few things that you think are really important to getting off to a good start?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think stakeholders, understand your stakeholders, make the time to introduce yourself, for them to introduce themselves, to understand, to build those, initial introductions, that first impressions count. Think about how you're presenting yourself or what it is that you're trying to achieve. Do research your stakeholders before you get in, understand who they are and what they're about and where they've come from and what you're going to be dealing with. And I think that's a really big I said priority. P1 is go and understand who your stakeholders are, do your research, get to know their background, get to know what they're about. And then I would say understand the business risks and drivers. Do your research around what are the risks, what are the drivers, what is it that we are trying to achieve, and go to corporate risk, go and speak to that all of these people. Get some time with your CEO if you can. One of the things that we did was kind of get them to endorse your program of work right from if the top down agenda is what's driving the whole business, then get them to endorse what you're doing and why you're there, because if you've got that backing, you're not pushing up, it's filtering down, and actually cyber and information security and privacy is a board level risk, so absolutely they should be engaged and involved in the corporate level of risk, obviously not in the day-to-day, but they should understand that. The other aspect of that is in getting to know your stakeholders and making those connections and getting the endorsements, but also doing your homework, understanding what the risks are, understanding what the business drivers are, budget, all of that kind of stuff. Start thinking about your strategy. It should be built in parallel with what you're doing in relation to assessments and risk assessment. Do your own assessments. In fact, even bring people into assessments, figure out what's actually going on, not just what's being presented to you, but the truth. And it might take a little bit to get there.
You definitely need the truth.
Yeah, it takes a bit of digging sometimes, but it'll come out in the end. So, and I think between all of that, the biggest thing is, don't assume everybody in the room understands everything, and don't make anybody feel inferior by using loads of acronyms and things that don't make sense. They know more about certain things that I don't know, and they don't make me feel inferior when I walk into a room. They are there to listen and understand what I'm saying, and I'm then if I'm afforded that respect, I should be affording that respect. And I think that's a big
thing. Really good. Fantastic. I think that's some really good tips there. I think that's where a lot of CISOs definitely fail in the very early stages of their career, and that just becomes compounded by other mistakes that they might make. Whereas I think if you get it right, you're afforded some flexibility, and then you've got the foundation of those relationships that will see you through if you do make mistakes. Because people are people, and you will make mistakes. It just so happens that in our industry, you make a mistake, it can be a serious incident. So that's the only thing that because of the dynamic nature of what we deal with. So switching gears somewhat, 2020 pandemic has spilled over into 2021, and the impact is obviously being felt everywhere on the global population. How have organizations like yours been adapting the cyber risk management demands of 2021 as a result of the global pandemic? Have you?
It's interesting because the biggest part of all of that is working from home, and how are we then securing our organization, our people, our technology, all of it, how is it set up for success with 100% remote working across the board globally? And for larger organizations and smaller organizations, I think the challenges may be slightly different, because especially with the organization that I work for, the setup was quite a local office with everybody quite local, and then offshore teams that work offshore with suppliers supplying services. But even the offshore teams, we had presence within the office space, so they weren't necessarily working offshore. They'd have been actually brought onshore and working in the office space. So it's a case of, right, everybody's going remote, everybody's going to the offshore and to wherever they need to work from. And are we set up to enable that to happen securely? And that became our focus. Although we've got a lot of big initiatives and programs that we're delivering at the moment, they are there, they are happening, but they weren't the priority. For more so was a priority of, are we happy that we have third-party access into our systems, and is that third-party access secure from that location in this part of the world? And how do we ensure that? And what are we doing over here? And I think that's where our focus has shifted slightly, and actually brought to light some things that we probably need to bring up our agenda, and kind of drop the priority over here. So we've done a little bit of reprioritization. Happy to say that the majority of things were the right things, so we haven't had to reprioritize much.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, so I think it's been a case of pragmatism as well, because in this environment, everybody's in the same boat, and we also know that the risk exists, but you've got to be pragmatic, and you've got to support the business to continue to operate, and whatever that looks like, we'll risk assess and think about risk versus your likelihoods and your impacts and all of that kind of stuff. So there's been a lot of conversation around risk and what risks are out there, and actually effectively managing that. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely, that's good to hear that. I mean, it's not uncommon, Dee, from what you're describing. If we've had similar experiences, I've heard from our community, and certainly, from the bank that I work for as well. So but it's good to just kind of hear that confirmation from you that it's not unusual. So there's I've got one final question, Dee, and thanks for all the responses so far. It's been great. But if I just think, I always try to do this, crystallize it into like a few things, and there's so much. But what are your top three tips for CISOs in 2021? When you're thinking about how are they pivoting their cyber resilience strategies and things like culture programs. But what are those kind of top three tips that you have for CISOs in 2021?
I think the biggest one is communication, know your audience, and be authentic. Be authentic. And know your business, and the biggest thing is go above and beyond just being a CISO. Support the business and enable the business, and in a nutshell, embed into the wider business objectives and what it is that they're achieving, and bring something else to the table, not just this. So and always be authentic with it. There's a lot. Is that a nutshell enough for you? Because I could carry on and go back into all of
that's one. You've got two more.
Okay. And then I think the second thing is all around personal resilience. So you can only give your best if you are operating from your best place. And if you're operating from your calm, centered place, you can deal with things, you can deal with a lot more, and you can deal with it a lot better. So find time to build your own personal resilience in whatever that looks like. It's really important. We all burn out, and we all take on so much, stress about everything, and there's a lot of things we go up against. And if we don't work on our personal resilience, and when that means looking after yourself, taking time out for yourself, coming up with strategies to deal with your, things that come up, and taking that time out, and realizing that yourself is important, because if you're not, investing in yourself, you can't really invest in anything else properly.
Yes.
That's a big tip, and something I've learned.
Yeah. And the last one?
And the last one is have some fun.
Hey, nice one.
Do you know what? Have some fun while you're doing it. It's a really serious thing that we do. And it's really important, but you've got to have fun while you're doing it.
Yeah. Do you know what, Dee? I think that's fantastic. And I was about to say, when you'd mentioned personal resilience, I think whatever you were going to say, that was something that I was going to go, yeah, that would be my one big thing.
Yeah.
But, and I think it is, right? I think, you can't do this job without building up some level of personal resilience. But actually, I think that's been trumped by have some fun, fun. Because, if you can get that bit right, I think it helps everything else, and it connects with pretty much everything else that you've been saying. It is a very serious business. And, I don't know about you, Dee, but every time you do take the time to connect with people and have fun, people sometimes go, I didn't realize you were like that. So you kind of get that sort of feedback. And that, people, barriers break down, they're much more open with you. And when things aren't going so well, and we know in our industry that it can turn in a moment, from everything looks good to, oops, there's a big incident, right? Where the spotlight's on you and there's lots of scrutiny. So that investment in wearing your responsibilities lightly, which is about having fun, and building the personal resilience is really key. Absolutely. So look, Dee, that's fantastic. I'll just close out with some closing remarks. And so look, for everybody out there, who's watching this, landing your first role as a CISO and thriving in the first 100 days, you've heard from Dee what's important, and it can seem daunting, as well as listening to people like Dee and many others who can inspire us as leaders. You can now have the opportunity to join the Cyber Leadership Institute, and you can do that for free and get access to peers. Dee's talked a lot about, having a tribe of mentors and people that you can connect with. Well, you can do that through the Cyber Leadership Institute and decide which of those individuals are going to be your new tribe to help you. You can sign up as a free member, and you can also download one of the playbooks. It's a CISO playbook for first 100 days. And again, I said that'll be in the link below and also on our website. Cyber Leadership exists for one purpose, and it's accelerating people's careers, whether you be an emerging CISO or just getting into cybersecurity and are focused on trying to achieve that top job. We do that by delivering best-in-class digital training programs. We have the Cyber Leadership Hub, which we have lots of access to tools, templates, and strategies that can help you move forward much quicker. And obviously, what everybody wants to do in any kind of community is to share with one another those best practices, and also those areas where things didn't go so well, and you're able to pass that knowledge on to others. So look, a final big thank you to my guest today, Dee. It's been a pleasure to see you again. I haven't seen you for a long time, and COVID has kept the distance, and hopefully we can correct that soon, hopefully in the not too distant future. Pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for sharing all your knowledge and inspiring, I'm sure, many young women in the industry from diverse backgrounds as well. I know if you want to connect with Dee, you'll be able to find her on LinkedIn. I think you're on Twitter as well. So please reach out to her, and I'm sure, especially if you're inspired by her story, and especially if you're a woman. So thanks, Dee. We'll leave it there, and thanks very much for your time. The Cyber Leadership Institute exists for one single purpose, and this is accelerating the career paths of emerging cybersecurity leaders, enabling them to land the top job and thrive amongst the C-suite. Be that a CISO role or a similar cybersecurity executive role. We do this by delivering best-in-class digital training programs, exclusive membership to a thriving global community, which is called the Cyber Leadership Hub. The platform gives access to members to tools, templates, and strategies, and they can connect with one another to share ideas and support one another as they advance their careers.